Big news of the day, Makhi Hughes redshirting the rest of the season for Oregon, and it raises two really important questions.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. My guy, Erik Skopil from 24/7 Sports and the Autzen Audibles podcast is here. We're going to talk Oregon's coordinators. We're going to talk about Dante Moore, the schedule talk. This is a 30-minute show that'll probably go for about 45 minutes, and it's brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Like Oregon's players, they sweat every detail at Mazda because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda Move and Be Move. Speaking of unexpected, Erik, Oregon beating Penn State, not something you and I had on our predictions before the year or leading up to the game, but you know what? Best incorrect prediction I've ever made, man. I've never been happier to be wrong on a personal level.
I had to look back. I hadn't missed a regular season game prediction since the Civil War in 22. So I was
been a while.
I was on a heater. Yeah, I was on a heater, and then was glad to be wrong.
Yeah, and then coming out of the game, we learned that Makhi Hughes didn't make the trip. We've now learned Makhi Hughes intends to redshirt the rest of the season. And I have two questions that come to mind. Number one, is he a lock to transfer? Feels that way. Number two, are they going to be able to keep Naeem Offord? And that might be the more important question going forward. Not that Oregon doesn't have a lot of secondary talent, but he is one of the most gifted guys on the back end. He's Oregon's fourth most snap corner this year. And of course, he and Makhi Hughes are brothers. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that, one or both of them wound up making their way to Oregon this year. And if Oregon were to lose Makhi Hughes and he's not part of the running back rotation going forward, Oregon can feel just fine. But if you lose Naeem Offord, again, there's other talent. But I think for Oregon fans right now, Erik, definitely seems to me like that would be a greater disappointment than if Hughes does wind up transferring.
Yeah, let's take these out of order because I agree. I think the more pressing matter is corner. And to take you back to kind of the origin of all of this is when we have not spoken to Naeem Offord on record. He's a true freshman. That doesn't happen. We've spoken to Makhi Hughes a couple of times, and he made it very clear. And now it kind of makes you wonder, begs the question, that he came to Oregon because his brother was going to Oregon. I think even Naeem had been an Ohio State commitment for a long time, and it kind of almost sounded like maybe Makai wasn't privy to exactly the fact that he was going to flip to Oregon. But basically, he said to help the family, we're going to go to the same school. It helps with travel. And again, it kind of begs the question of was Makai as sold on Oregon as Naeem, or did he just say, hey, I'm super talented running back. I'll just follow my brother and things will work out. And so you kind of wonder if this is as much of a package deal as it sounded like it was initially. Your question is very valid. What does that mean for both of these players? Now, the other part now, and again, I don't know how much validity I put into this. Matt Zenitz from CBS Sports, who does a great job aiding us over at 24/7, posted a note shortly after saying Makai hasn't conveyed to Oregon he intends to transfer. Oregon would like to keep him. I'm sure both of those things are true in the moment. It would be a staggering surprise to me for a player of his caliber to say, I'm going to burn the year and then I'm going to stay at the school where my primary competition are two true freshmen who aren't going anywhere. So I would be stunned and floored, and it would really speak to, it would be almost a completely different deal than Dante Moore, who we all gave so many flowers for. Oh, he's so patient. He bided his time. Well, what exactly would Makai be biding his time for? Doesn't seem like to be the Oregon starting running back. So I would be surprised if he's on the roster next year. Maybe we'll be shocked and he'll come out and be the leading runner. We were shocked with his role this year, frankly.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, you and myself included, thought he'd be Oregon's number one guy, and then there was reportedly, very much behind the scenes, at least from my vantage point, a switch amongst the staff, and Will Stein has talked about it. Like, yeah, we didn't realize how good these true freshmen were going to be. Like, we thought they were guys, but now we look at them and go, oh, these dudes are good. And then you watch them in the 5th game of their college careers, and they're going out and making impact plays against a Penn State defense that has NFL guys all over it. Like, that's pretty telling as to, what the staff said, and sometimes what they say is coach speak, and sometimes this being one of those instances, no, they're just telling you straight up, we didn't know how good these guys were going to be. I would love if Makhi Hughes was back next year, because Think about this. You're going to lose Noah Whittington after this season. He's out of eligibility, I'm pretty sure, unless there could be another medical year in there.
7 years?
7 years would be a long time. But you're, I believe, also losing Jay Harris from the running back room after this year.
He got a year back, so he technically has another one. Either way, yeah, you can continue.
Yeah, my point is that there are more carries available next season than there are this year. It's just because Noah Whittington we know isn't going to be there. It's just that from Makhi Hughes' standpoint, he's a top running back in the transfer portal. He could go to a lot of Power 4 schools, or heck, he could return to Tulane, who's a playoff contender this year, by the way, and go be a number 1 running back somewhere.
Yeah. No, he's going to have a lot of opportunity. And then just to circle back to Naeem real quick, because I said I was going to start there, and then I think I kind of started there, and then we veered off to his brother. The thing to monitor with him is he's still at 4 games. He didn't play on Saturday. Now, did he not play because Oregon tightened up its corner rotation and went to 4 guys, and he just wasn't one of the 4 guys? I know, credit to Spencer, when we were on, a while back, you even suggested he might be the odd man out in that rotation. He might redshirt. It felt like, based upon play on the field, he was the weakest of the 3 freshman corners. It also felt like at one point Sione Lalea was out for a game. Obviously, Theron Johnson didn't start this season. Both those guys returned, and the rotation against Penn State was those 4, excluding Naeem. So Naeem was on the trip. You can certainly find him in the post-game ruckus, congratulating the Penn State fans with certain gestures. I think Spencer probably is aware of what I'm talking about. He was there. I know that for a fact. I also know he didn't play. And so keep an eye on what his role is the next couple of weeks, because if he doesn't play against Indiana, you can chalk that up to, and maybe it's a really competitive game, 2 top 10 teams. If he doesn't play against Rutgers or Wisconsin, games that Oregon's going to be favored by 25 plus points, I would imagine, even on the road against Rutgers, that gives you a pretty clear indication he's using a redshirt year, and that opens the door for, is he going to go and use it somewhere else, or is he taking a patient approach and comfortable saying, hey, I'm going to use a redshirt year, which no problem with that, and come back and have a little bit more of an extended period.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to look far to see an example of that working out. Ife Obadegwu is one of Oregon's 2 starting corners this year, and he was not a 5-star, but a highly rated blue chip talent in the class of 2024. Did Ife play more than 20 snaps?
He was hurt and didn't play a single snap last year.
Yeah, and if he had been healthy, maybe he plays a little, but maybe like that's a definite maybe. But take a year out, and then you come in and you're going to have a chance. Now, Finney and Ife aren't going anywhere.
Yes.
So you're going to have to try and beat them for snaps. But we have seen this defensive staff rotate a lot of guys. I saw all of Aaron Flowers, Peyton Woodyard, and Kingston Lopa play in that safety spot on Saturday opposite Dylan Thieneman. They were all out there. Theron Johnson got on the field as well as the third quarter. Jaden Kennedy and Sione Lalea. Like, there are clearly snaps to be had. So I don't think that it's unthinkable. This might just come down to how badly do those 2 guys want to play together. I want to real quick mention, someone sent me a take for Spencer's scale of agreement, and I'll get your 1 to 10 on this as well. Okay. With Naeem looking like a redshirt candidate and his brother Makai on the outside of the rotation, both players enter the portal. I don't think I can put that at any lower than a 5, which is my line for it's just as likely to happen as not. And frankly, I'm probably at a 5.5 is where I'd put that right now.
Well, not having a whole lot of experience using the Spencer scale of what was it?
Spencer's Scale of Agreement, or SSA for short, not the Social Security Administration.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of SSA experience in either regard. So maybe I'm not an expert, but I think that's above a 5 using what you just explained. If it's based on likelihood, it seems a little bit more likely than not. And at the same time, I'm not reporting that. That's just kind of reading tea leaves and making some insinuations here that could be completely off base. And it's very plausible that Naeem ends up at ultimately like winning a job. Like who knows? Like, I mean, that seems completely far fetched, but this school operates with a, prove yourself mentality. And he just didn't play in the biggest game of the season. He's got a bye week. That seems like an opportunity for him to really bust his ass. We know he's gifted, and he's the highest rated corner prospect in school history, a former 5-star. At the same time, like you kind of talked about it earlier about the Makhi Hughes of it all with regards to the running back rotation, why that's not cause for concern. I kind of feel somewhat similar about the future at corner just because the other two players are the same age as him. And so you could make a pretty strong pitch if you're another school, which would be tampering, but is apparently illegal now, to say, hey,
Everybody tampers.
Come back to SEC country or come back to Ohio State, and you're behind two guys that are going to be there the whole time you're trying to compete for that starting job. Why don't you come out back east somewhere? So I think it's very, very plausible that that's the ultimate outcome, and that would be disappointing. I think it would also suggest that you feel really good about where you're at corner with those other two guys.
Yeah, I mean, the depth is crazy. That you've got a couple freshmen on the outside, and we haven't even talked about every name that is in that room that could be a contributor going forward. Has Dakota Fields realized his full potential? Dorian Brew is in that room. Like the list kind of keeps going on.
Brew, who just really quick has been hurt and hasn't been able to play, so we don't really know what his capability
Good point.
is.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I saw him in the spring game. Thought he did some really, really good stuff. And if he gets back on the field, maybe he's got an iffy kind of trajectory, like you were talking about. So a lot of options out there. We're going to come back because, of course, we would. This is not a 12-minute podcast. That would be incredibly short and boring, and I wouldn't fulfill my obligation to not just the network, but all you, the listeners out there. Oregon's coordinators. Boy, I bet Erik is overflowing with thoughts about Oregon's coordinators. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, you put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Yeah, that's right. And if you want to bet anything college football related, which you might because you're listening to or watching this show, if you want to get an early start on looking at what to expect for Oregon, Indiana, Ducks are 10.5-point favorites. That is pretty good. Or at least that's how Vegas thinks Oregon is. Do you think they're overrated, underrated, appropriately rated? Whatever you think, FanDuel's got you covered. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Check them out at FanDuel.com. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives, and Square helps them do that. You've probably used Square without even realizing, or maybe you have realized it before. I use it all the time because I go out to local businesses, and when you want to just have a couple of taps on your phone, pull up your credit card digitally, and pay for whatever service or food you're getting, Square makes it really easy to do just that. Square helps local businesses thrive. That helps the neighborhood thrive. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square. See you in the neighborhood. Erik, I want to start with Tosh Lupoi, who your colleague over at Autzen Audibles, Matt Prame, was, shall we say, passionately defending because of the hot seat talk that I've talked about a good chunk of on this show. And I think I'm a little bit more in the I understand where fans are coming from camp. I have not been in the get rid of Tosh Lupoi camp where some Oregon fans have been, but after the Penn State game, I got a big chuckle from Matt, who was just so over this idea that Tosh isn't a good enough defensive coordinator to get Oregon where they want to go. This is the first time in a big game since he's been there that Oregon's held a team under 30 points. So it was definitely a landmark performance. And I just wondered what you thought about all of that.
I'll start with this. Matt's passionate plea was followed by Dan Lanning really propping his guy up in the Ducks versus them. Like that stood out to me. Not that it was like a necessary vote of confidence. I doubt that was the reason behind it, but to run like a 15-second, 20-second kind of Dan addressing the team, saying this is the hardest worker I've ever been around. He puts his guys in position better than anybody I've ever been around. Certainly kind of ran counter to some of the narratives. Now, it's also hard to ignore like some of the previous pitfalls that's happened in some of the losses. Like I don't disagree with the fact that he has had moments and the defense has had, like, not to put it all on him either, but the defense has had moments that have not been great. And if you're probably being honest, like the 6 games Oregon has lost, throw out Georgia because they were going to get shellacked in that game no matter who was calling offense or defense. You could make a case the defense was the lesser side of the football and probably was
absolutely
more cause than the offense in all those games.
You go back to those, heartbreaking 3-point Washington losses. Yeah. There were 3 of them. Oregon's offense didn't score fewer than 33 points in a game in any of them.
31 or 33.
Yeah, let me pull it up real quick.
Might have been 34, 31 and 1 or regardless. Yeah, no, so I think I can understand the thinking and the logic in that. I'm also very staunchly in I'm going to trust that Dan, as a defensive coordinator himself with the history he's had working with Tosh, knows what he has. If that game went the other way though, and Penn State ran for 295 yards again and won the game going away, and Oregon didn't have any answers, I would have been understanding of maybe this isn't the right fit. Just like I know Penn State fans are kind of addressing some things with their coordinators, especially like a Kotelnicki, who's I think been pretty darn impressive at times, but also like I understand you're booing the offense in the third quarter of a really big game, or maybe even the first
at home.
half.
Yeah,
at home, and
at home.
That sort of suggests where that fan base is at. I mean, if you're an elite program and you want to win national championships, the stakes are high and the expectations are really high. And I understand if you believe to this point Tosh was like 0-5 against elite competition or in big games in terms of getting it done, but Saturday certainly he did, and you have to give a ton of credit to him. Yeah. You have to give a ton of credit for the talent there and the players up front, I think, in the trenches for the way they played, kind of shutting down that narrative. I don't think there's any question coming out of that one who was better in the trenches, and it might not have even been all that close of a decision if you're being honest.
Yeah, I mean, I have said all week that Oregon's defensive line was the best unit on either side of the ball for either team on Saturday night. That was the unit that won the game. By the way, back to the Washington conversation, those 3 straight 3-point losses to the Huskies, the offense put up 34, 33, and 31.
Okay, yeah, 31.
Like in those matchups, and I think that's where it comes from, is in those spots. If you'd said going in, hey, Oregon's going to score 34, 33, and 31, you tell me if you hold a team to 30 points exactly 30 points in 3 straight games, you'd go 3-0. Like that, I think is where that came from. But it was by far the best defensive performance in a big spot that Oregon's defense has had, I think, since the 2022 Utah game. You think back to that game, they had a hobbled Bo Nix that scored, 17 points? And it was early in the game, too. Like, he couldn't hardly move. We thought Ty Thompson was potentially going to start. Chris Hudson let that slip early in the week. What a time. What a time all of that was, and the names that I just brought up there. But yeah. I think since then, Oregon's had to lean on the offense. And in this game, it was a really balanced attack. And I want your thoughts on Will Stein as well. But you can't look at the defense in this spot and say anything other than they showed up and played an incredible football game.
Well, and I think my favorite part of it is not just what they did through 3.5 quarters. It's the fact that in overtime, and I know the first overtime, it was kind of like, uh-oh. I mean, it was 21 consecutive points, and you were kind of going. We haven't talked much, but I was at my sister's wedding watching this, and there were some
fall weddings. Oh, goodness.
So there were some nervous Nellies huddled around the cell phone at one of the tables as we were watching the overtime period. but like a huge credit to the defensive staff and the players for getting that done. And, the breakdown that I think Dan and Dylan and some have been kind of really proud in explaining, like, this was the look they were looking for. They had a defensive package specifically for it, and it works. And that right there, like, by definition, is what you want from a coordinator, right? Is like making the adjustment, finding something that works, that maybe comes in the face of some down moments. Like, that's what you want from your defensive coordinator. Now, it's also really hard a lot of the times to know how many of these in-game adjustments are being made, because not a lot of schools provide a 23-minute documentary series once a week explaining a lot of this stuff.
Shout out to Scott Anderson and the team, man. Those guys are crushing it every week.
Nailed it. And you're hearing on the headset, like,
the headset is the best part.
Mike Galowski being like, "Oh, here comes the score route," and then you're hearing from Tosh, "All right, let's try boat. Let's run boat."
Yeah.
Where are we getting this from? I mean, it's honestly incredible cinema.
I also, another one of those moments that I loved. If you haven't watched it yet, what in the world are you doing? Go and check it out. But if you remember, there's a point where Lanning is on the 4th and 1 to Dierre and Moore before Oregon's first field goal, when they go play action, a 2-man route in the deep crossers, and you see the linebackers get sucked up by 5 yards to create the space in behind, and Dierre just cooks the guy on the perimeter. And the other route runner, Kenyon Sadiq, feed the studs, as Will Stein says. Lanning is looking at the formation and saying, Drew Maringer, he's like, Drew, are we good? Are we good? Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good. We're good. We're good. We like it. And then they go and execute the play. I cannot get enough of that stuff, man. It's so fun to see that level of a peek behind the curtain.
Well, I was going to say, as people who've never coached football games, in my case at all, I don't know, Spencer, if you got like a little pee-wee coaching career behind it. It's just, it's fun to hear what that actually is like pre-snap and the communication, what they're looking at. And because like you said, you draw it up, you've got, Drew in the box, you got Brian in the box. This is offense and defense. And they're giving the looks and communicating it down to the head coach or the offensive defensive coordinators to convey whether or not what they're thinking is actually going to work. And just the fact that has to be like a split decision. And in the case of on defense, if like Penn State goes tempo and snaps it a little early, you might not be able to get the call down from the box saying, hey, actually, this look is not going to work. Audible, get to something else. I mean, that is, again, it's fascinating and really fun to watch.
I completely agree. I have a fun coordinator story that you and everybody will enjoy hearing, and then we're going to talk Oregon's schedule and Dante Moore somehow in like the final 10 minutes of this show. Just watch. We're going to make it work. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes for the Ducks and beyond are sweating all the details. And Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every model, which I can appreciate. As somebody who plays a lot of golf, details are important, and I value them in a really big way. Mazda does as well. From leather upholstery to smooth handling to standard in every crossover SUV is all-wheel drive. That is what Mazda is delivering for you. Like Oregon's players, they sweat every detail at Mazda because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. And this episode also brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Do you want to go to an Oregon game this year? A college football game this year? Experience the juice of a stadium, of a rivalry, of anything that makes college football great, and everything, then Game Time's the way to do it. Game Time is the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. You don't want to deal with endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. Game Time is here to help you get past all of that. I've used it several times. The process was great. Ticket got right on my phone. No problems. Had a great deal. Had a great time. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Okay, let me start with this story, Erik. This happened in what most would consider a random college football game, but someone I know who's a sports information director was up near the coordinator's box and could kind of overhear, and I've heard this too, doing radio play-by-play for Southern Utah is like a coach's box can be quite the dramatic spectacle. And so they're in the window over, and the coordinator didn't like the look. And I'll use the word crap, but there was a different word that was used that we don't repeat here on the show. And this is what my friend heard. Oh, crap, no, timeout. That's what it is like. And most people don't know that, but that's what it is. They're up there, and when a touchdown is scored, yeah, and then they're going crazy. You know, coordinator cams in the NFL are great, and that Oregon gives that sort of direct access, I think is just really, really cool to see how that all goes down and it's a split second decision. Drew, do we like the look? If he says no, timeout. Immediately, right?
Or if Drew has a pause, you're just kind of screwed. I guess we do. I guess. Cosign, let's go.
Yeah. That'd be like the worst thing if Dad gets on there, goes, Drew, we good? Yeah. You know, what do? You got a couple seconds to make that particular decision. But Dante Moore made that throw on the fourth down, Erik, and he had an awesome game. I still think there's, another gear in these big spots. I mean, he only threw for 248 yards. It's a great defense. But I think there was still more in there. Somehow, some way, I feel like there's a next gear that he can get to. So I want you to talk about that, but also the designed runs were huge in this game.
Yeah.
And that is not a primary feature of Dante Moore's game. It's clearly something they keep in their back pocket. But I don't want to see him run ever again until he absolutely has to. He is playing at such a high level.
Well, you're touching on two things I was going to talk about in the Will Stein portion of the show. So let's
go for it.
Carry those over. Because the design runs was going to be like the first thing that stood out to me and just how they called this game, because I think it was 3 different fourth downs. And once it didn't work, it was kind of stonewalled a couple times it did, that they turned to those plays, and obviously including in the first overtime to run it. It's 4th and 1, I believe, following
game on the line, 4th and ball game.
Yeah, 4th and ball game, and they say, let's just run the quarterback. And like it stood. One of the things that Dan said afterwards, and it's so simple, but you just kind of overlook it sometimes because it's such a complicated game, is he goes, against a defensive like that, we can't give up a number. It's got to be 11 on 11. We have to utilize all our personnel, and if you're not going to run your quarterback on certain situations, you're playing them 10 on 11, that's a very simplified way of thinking about it. But that just in those terms and thinking about the quality of competition that they were facing, that's it's a math equation. And that's what it came down to. And so credit to Will Stein for drawing that up. Credit to Dante Moore for being incredibly gutsy. By the way, I did ask Dan a couple weeks ago, like, should he slide more? And he was kind of like, I like it when my quarterback goes for it. I also liked seeing Dante slide twice in that game.
Me too.
To protect himself.
Too.
Because
not every quarterback knows how to slide.
No, you're right. And Dante does. We learned he does, because those were the first slides of the season. That's not going to be his primary role by any means in this offense. But just like Justin Herbert down the stretch of the 2019 season, Big Ten Championship, Rose Bowl, where
Pac-12.
Gosh.
R.I.P.
So long ago, I just
flipped
it off and forgot about it. You remember a different offensive coordinator, kind of leaning on that play and the ability to use the quarterback's legs. And it's not going to be an every week thing. That's how you get quarterbacks hurt. But in these big moments, to take advantage of it and for Dante to go out and execute it pretty flawlessly, along with everybody around him, that really stood out. And then the other thing I was going to touch on is, I think Will called a great game. So much of this ended up being like the chess match within the game of Jim Knowles putting his defense. We were just talking about the defense being in the right spot for Oregon. There's so many of these plays that Oregon has success on, or plays where Dante's reads just aren't there. They're just eliminated. Like,
yeah,
3 of the biggest plays of the game, I can think of the throw to Corian, the throw to Kenyon, and then the pass to Gary Bryant Jr. in the first overtime to get that conversion there, where he looks to the left in the screen game to Dierre Hill. Looks like they're running a very similar set to one that they scored on.
It was a dangerous throw. You go back and watch that. That linebacker from Penn State or defensive end is not far away. You don't have a strong enough arm, and that ball is 6 going the other way.
But just to look over and go, that's not there. I'm going to come over here, and just that adaptive capability, that kind of off script to figure things out. That's what really impressed me about Dante in this game. And like reputationally, I said it on a podcast I did yesterday on the Autzen Audibles. Like the expectation was he was going to be somebody who put the ball into jeopardy. The fact that he's able to make these off script plays without really doing that. There were a couple throws that weren't perfect, but I can't think of, aside from the one where DeCorian hit the ball to himself and then to a defender, where it really hit a defender's hands the entire game.
Yeah, that was probably his worst throw of the day. I mean, DeCorian has A.J. Harris absolutely beat to the inside, and Dante barely got it to his hands, and then the deflection, and Harris wasn't expecting the ball, and then DeCorian's got the concentration. How good is that guy, man? He's crazy good. I want to close with this, and I'll talk about this more throughout the week for my everydayers out there, but the schedule going forward for Oregon, this was the toughest game, and I don't think they have, all easy games left. I could still see them finishing 11-1. I guess 10-2 is possible. It's just hard to see right now, but perceptions of teams can change. Indiana is up next on October 11th at Autzen, 12:30 p.m. kickoff on CBS, and Indiana is a good team. It's hard to win at Autzen. You got to go at Washington. They didn't play great against Ohio State offensively, but defensively, I think they're pretty Washington is not a great team, but they're a good team. We'll see what they do on the road against Maryland this week, who's off to a surprise 4-0 start, and if they can handle that, I think Washington's a 7-8 win team, and a rivalry game you have to go on the road. USC is competent. Iowa defensively is competent. It's just kind of a lot of, no one is going to make Oregon an underdog like Penn State. That doesn't mean they couldn't lose. I just look at the rest of these games going forward, and I'm going, man, is at Washington your toughest game because of the rivalry factor? It might be. Indiana is good, but I just watched them struggle with Iowa, Iowa's okay.
Yeah, do you have the betting lines, the early lines on these games?
Indiana is Oregon minus 10.5.
I saw that.
Before the season, it opened at 12.5 for Washington and 13.5 for USC. Those lines have been taken off the board. I imagine because they're going to come down, they're still going to be Oregon by over a touchdown.
And that's what I was thinking is I expect there'll be 10+ point favorites in every game. I don't think that's a reach. At Washington would probably be the game maybe that has the lowest margin. I did a ranking of the games myself over on Deck Territory a couple of days ago. I still had Indiana number 1 just because I think that's the best roster that Oregon's going to face. And I think games at Washington, Iowa had next, and you can certainly convince me USC is a tougher game than that at Iowa, especially if Gronowski.
Those are different games. They're
very couldn't
very
be more
different. Yeah. They're very different.
But to your point, I was also looking at the ESPN FPI, their predictions, their kind of predictive model. Oregon's has 65% or better percentage chance of winning every single one of these games.
FPI.
I'm not saying it's super valid. I'm just saying if you want to use a metric, it suggests Oregon should win the rest of these games. I think Indiana is going to be pretty telling. They're so different than Penn State as well. In a certain way, I think that might favor Oregon. I maybe was a little overcritical, but I did my lessons of the week, and one of the things that I stood out, the only thing that stood out that was kind of a negative is I thought outside of Bryce Betcher, the play at linebacker wasn't great. I don't know if Devin Jackson and Jerry Mixon are great fits against that type of an offense. They're going to be more than well equipped against the way Indiana wants to attack you. I don't know what the weak link is for Oregon in a matchup like that. And having seen Fernando Mendoza up close and personal struggle at Autzen a couple of years ago, I know he's grown a lot, totally different system. I have a hard time believing he comes in and gets it done. But again, you're going to learn a lot just because these are such different matchups. If you break it down, half of these teams are kind of feel like you can group them in one kind of physical between the trenches, not a lot of offensive explosiveness, and the other are kind of the opposite. So at least you're going to get a varied test of games, but not one that I look at and feel like that looks like a loss.
Yeah, not on paper, but that is why they play games. Where is it? On the field with grass that is just tall enough to touch Noah Whittington's knee. Erik Skopil, Duck Territory, and the Autzen Audibles podcast. Appreciate it as always, man. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And go Ducks.